Alright, today I'm going to be showing you how to set up a dedicated home file/media server on Ubuntu Server. So now, I've actually done a video about this 2.5 years ago, and in that video, I did this using Samba to create local network shares for all your data. However, I've actually discovered a much better and more secure way of implementing this. Specifically, I'm going to use a program called Nextcloud, which will basically allow our server to function like a cloud storage service like Google Drive or Dropbox, except it's going to be hosted in your own home on your own server that you've installed Ubuntu Server on and configured yourself. But anyway, without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so first thing we need to do is install Ubuntu Server, if you haven't already. To download a copy, just head over to ubuntu.com/download/server, and then download Ubuntu Server. The latest version at the time of shooting this video is 22.04.1 LTS. So we're going to download that, and once the download shows up, just click OK. Now I've actually already downloaded this file and set it up in a virtual machine. Now, although I'm going to be doing this in a virtual machine, the behavior and everything will be the same as if it were on a physical machine. But anyway, I'm going to go start it up, and then you're going to need to go into your boot menu, and then boot from your Ubuntu Server installation media, and then click Try or Install Ubuntu Server by hitting the Enter key, and then let the Ubuntu Server installer boot up. Alright, normally Ubuntu Server's display output would fill up the screen, but it doesn't here just because it's in a virtual machine. That's the only difference with a virtual machine versus a physical machine. But anyway, I'm going to select my language, keyboard layout. We're going to just install the default Ubuntu server. And then under our network configuration, we can click on our Ethernet. And by the way, if you're wanting to connect to Wi-Fi, that's a pretty cumbersome process, which I've covered in another video. And for a server, I would strongly recommend against a Wi-Fi connection, just because an Ethernet connection is much faster. I would honestly say do anything else if you can. Run a long Ethernet cable from your router to your server. Hire a contractor to install some Ethernet wiring in your house. Buy a pair of power line adapters to hardwire your server to your router over the electrical wiring in your house. Even though that last one is not ideal, it's still probably going to be better than Wi-Fi, unless you have a really good Wi-Fi card and an outstanding router. But anyway, enough talk. I'm going to show you what it's like to do a manual configuration, even though for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be doing automatic. Though I would strongly recommend manual to ensure that your server's IP address never changes. And this is especially important if you're wanting to do port forwarding to open it up to the outside world. But anyway, most of this information you can get from another system on your network. Okay, now in the subnet field, you're going to put in the network address of your network, which for most people is usually 192.168.0 or 1.0/24. And the /24 represents a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. And then for the address, in the case of the setup on most home networks, you're going to start it off with 192.168.0, or in this case, 1. Whatever we want. For a server, I would do .2 unless that's being used already, in which case I just keep going up until I find one that's not being used. You can check which IP addresses are assigned by going into your router settings. And once you've set your server's IP address, make sure to go into your router settings and reserve that IP for your server in order to exclude that address from being handed out by your router's DHCP. And now we've got past the hardest part. So for gateway, you just put in the gateway address of your router. Again, reference another device connected to your network. For most people, it's 192.168.0 or 1.1. And then for our name servers, I generally like to use Cloudflare's, which are 1.1.1.1 and 1.0.0.1. And search domains you can leave blank. But anyway, now you can save it. I'm going to hit cancel in my case, since this is just a virtual machine I'm setting up for demonstration purposes, so I'll be fine with an IP address handed out by DHCP. But anyway, I'm going to hit done, done, done. Alright, and then for our storage configuration, we're going to use an entire disk and select our internal drive in our server. And then we're going to uncheck set up this disk as an LVM group, just so that way it uses up the whole disk by default. And it also makes it easier for partitioning. But anyway, I'm going to hit done, and then we can take a look at this. It should say no available devices unless you've got other drives in your server. And then use devices should look something like this. Our slash partition should be the biggest one here. Looks good, so we're going to hit done and continue. And then for our user account configuration, you're going to put in your name, and then you're going to name your server. I'll call it Drew Howden Tech -server. And by the way, you can't have capitals or spaces in your server name, and then pick a username. Same principle with the server name. I am just going with Drew. And then we're going to choose a password. Make sure this is a strong password, because this is what you're going to be using to administer your server. And then hit done. And yes, we're going to install OpenSSH server to allow us to administer the server from a remote computer. Then done. And then we're going to come down to Nextcloud and hit the space key to accept that, and then tab, done. And then it'll go install Ubuntu Server, and then once that's done, after the reboot, it'll go install Nextcloud for us. So now this will take a while, so I'll speed this up. Alright, and then once it's done installing, we're gonna hit reboot now. Alright, then once we get to the screen where it says please remove the installation medium, then press enter. We're going to remove our Ubuntu Server installation media, then hit enter. And then it'll go boot us into our new Ubuntu Server installation, where it'll then install Nextcloud. All right, now that it's booted up, again, it's going to go install Nextcloud, so we'll wait for that to complete. All right, and now once it says reach target cloud INRT, and it's popped up with our SSH host key fingerprints. Now we can go log in, and we can see it has some updates to install. I'll get everything updated now by running sudo apt upgrade. Punch in your password. And by the way, to check for updates, just run sudo apt update. But anyway, we're going to hit Y to install our updates. And by the way, if you ever want to install Nextcloud manually after installing Ubuntu Server, just run sudo snap install nextcloud. Alright, and then if you get this pop-up, just hit enter. Alright, and now that the updates are done, we're going to go configure our firewall rules for our server. First, we've got to do sudo ufw enable to enable our firewall. All right, and firewall is active on system startup. So now we're gonna allow in our SSH connections by doing sudo ufw allow 22/TCP. And now to allow connections to our Nextcloud, which goes over the standard web protocol, we're gonna do sudo ufw allow 80 and 443 for our HTTP and HTTPS traffic, respectively, /TCP. Then hit enter. All right, now that our firewall is configured, you may choose to work from a remote computer on your network via SSH. To do that, first I'm gonna log out of the server by typing exit, and then you're gonna go into your terminal or your command prompt if you're on Windows, and then just type SSH, your username on your server, at your server's IP address, which in my case is 192.168.1.156. And if you ever forget what that is, just log back into your server, and as soon as you log in, it'll tell you. But anyway, I'm going to hit enter. First time connecting to your server, it'll pop up this. You're just going to type yes, and then you're going to type in the password on your server. All right, and now first thing we're going to do to set up HTTPS on our Nextcloud instance, which is important for what I hope are obvious reasons. We're going to do sudo nextcloud.https-enable self-signed. And this will generate a self-signed certificate for Nextcloud. And unfortunately, we can't get a certificate from a proper certificate authority unless we have our own domain, and even then it wouldn't be recognized if we're connecting from our local network. But anyway, we're going to hit enter, punch in your password. Oh, sorry, it's sudo nextcloud.enable-https, my bad. Let's go try running that again, and then it should go generate our key and self-signed certificate and restart our Nextcloud server. And once that's done, we can just go visit our Nextcloud instance by opening up our web browser and typing in our server's IP address. And then because it's a self-signed certificate, our browser is going to complain that there's a potential security risk ahead. We're going to go to advanced and continue. All right, now it'll bring us to the Nextcloud installation screen to complete the installation. We're going to create an admin account on our Nextcloud instance. And again, you want a strong password here, and then just click install. And then this will actually take a little while, so be patient. All right, now once it's done installing Nextcloud, it'll give us some recommended apps. We're going to install those just so that we have a more complete Nextcloud installation. Alright, now we're in our Nextcloud installation, where it will give us this pop-up first time we come to it, which for some reason is not showing up. At least the first part of it, unless I hit next and then go back to it. But anyway, I'm going to click out of this. Now, you're not quite at the end of the road yet if you've just gotten to your Nextcloud dashboard. There's a couple extra configurations we have to do. First of all, if we come into our files, you can see we've got everything here. I'm sure you can figure out how to use the file system here. But anyway, let's go into our documents. And I just want to point out that with the Nextcloud Snap out of the box, if you try to open a Word document, a PowerPoint presentation, an Excel spreadsheet, or any productivity suite document, which uses the built-in Collabora server on Nextcloud, it actually just hangs forever on the loading screen, and it doesn't get past this loading screen. And this is because of a bug in the default Collabora configuration file. I actually have a workaround for that, which I'm going to show you right now. So if we come back over to our SSH, we're going to do sudo nano //extra-apps/rich-documents/proxy.php, exactly like that, no spaces, all lowercase. That's a mouthful, I know, but anyway, we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to come down to this line, exec/sbin/ld-config. You can identify it by the bracket, quote, and then another bracket. But anyway, here we're going to go comment out these lines by putting 2 slashes before them, which will basically make our built-in Collabora server inside our Nextcloud instance ignore them. And then we're going to hit Control-X, Y, and then enter to save it. And now we're going to come back to our Nextcloud, go to Settings under our profile, and then scroll down to under Administration, Nextcloud Office. And then here you're going to click Use Your Own Server and make sure Disable Certificate Verification is unchecked, otherwise it'll have errors when you're loading documents. Don't worry about the insecure part of it. We will still have encryption through our HTTPS. It's just that it won't try to verify the certificate of our built-in Collabora server in our Nextcloud instance. But anyway, you're just going to leave this the same and then click Save. And then it'll go setting up a new server. That'll take a little bit. All right, and then once that's done, it should say Collabora Online Server is reachable, and then it'll go back to this option here. Don't worry, it has applied our changes to our configuration file, which is why we did this. So if we go back to our files, documents, and then try to open up that document again, now it will actually load up our document and allow us to edit it. But anyway, I'm going to close out of it since there's actually other stuff we need to do. The next thing we're going to do is set up our outgoing email server on our server. To do that, we're going to come back to our SSH and then type sudo apt install postfix, then hit enter again to confirm the installation of postfix. And then for our mail configuration type, we're going to select internet site, and we can just keep the system mail name the default, which is the name of our server and let that go install. All right, and then once this screen pops up, just hit enter. All right, and then once that's done, we can come back over to our Nextcloud instance and under administration, basic settings, email server. This is where we're going to set up our email configuration. So our send mode is going to be SMTP, and unfortunately it won't work if we enable encryption. And then for our from address, in the email field, we can just type whatever we want. I'm just going to do Nextcloud. And then I would do your server's name or whatever you configured your system mail name as, if that's different, which in my case is Drew Howden tech-server. And then we can just go send a test email, which actually, in order to do that, we actually need to go set our email address under our personal info. So I'm just going to punch in my YouTube email, drewhowdentech@gmail.com. And actually, while I'm here, I'm going to set my full name to Drew Howden. All right, now I'm going to come back to my basic settings email server and try sending the test email now. Yep, email sent. And if you don't see it in your inbox, try looking in your spam folder. But anyway, our test email got to us. So now we know that it's configured correctly. And you can go delete that once you're done with it. And by the way, the reason why we did this is so that way our forgot password function will work properly. But anyway, another thing we've got to do, if we come to overview under administration, it'll give us a couple of warnings regarding our setup. The first is this warning, which I'm not sure we can really do anything about, given that we've installed Nextcloud as a snap. And I honestly don't think this is a real big deal anyway. But the second one, our installation has no default phone region set. In order to set that, we're going to come back to our SSH instance and then type sudo nano /var/snap /nextcloud /current /nextcloud /config/config.php. Exactly like that. No capitals, no spaces. Then hit enter, and then we're going to come all the way to the end of our file, just above this, and then we're going to create a new line, put double quotes, and then type default _phone _region, exactly like that, =, greater than sign, space, double quotes, and then our country code, which mine is CA since I'm in Canada, and then we're going to hit Control X, Y, enter to save it. And now if we refresh this page, and now that warning should be gone. But anyway, this is also where we're going to be getting updates to our Nextcloud. But anyway, now we're finally done the file server portion of our setup. But there's one last thing to do to make it a media server as well. To do that, there's one final app that I'm gonna get you to install. If we go under featured apps and then search for group and then download and enable group folders. All right, and then once that's installed, we can come to our settings and then under administration, scroll down to group folders. And then we're gonna create a folder called media, and I would give it unlimited quota. And once we've created it, we can go add groups to our folder, starting off with the admin group, which is the admins of our server. And I'm going to give it permissions to write, share, and delete. Now, if we come to our users, we can add a new group called media, and then you can add a user to it by going to your active users, clicking edit on the user, and then going to their groups, and then checking the group that you want to add them to. There we go. Now my user's a part of media. Or a more ideal setup would be I'm going to take myself out of media since I'm already part of admin, and then add a new user. I'm going to call it test, and then give it the display name test user, create a password for that user, and you can specify their email. I'm not going to for the purposes of this video, and then I'm going to add it to group media. And by the way, you can actually select storage quotas for each individual user. But anyway, I'm going to click add a new user. All right, now it added test user to our media group. If we come to our media group, you can see that test is a part of that. So now we're going to come back to our settings, group folders, and then I'm going to add the media group to our folder, and I'm going to turn off write and delete for the media group. And the reason for that is because you want to keep your media folder organized so that way everything easy to find. It's kind of hard to do that when you have everybody else in your house just being able to dump files on it willy-nilly. But anyway, now I think you'll know why I set it up this way. So now, if we come back to our files, we'll see a new folder with the group icon on it called media, which we can't delete from here. And then us as an admin can create new folders and upload files. So let's create folders for our movies, TV shows, and music. All right, and now I'm gonna go log out of this account and log in as the test user, and then go into their files, and they'll also see media as part of the media group, but you can see that they can't actually add anything or rename or delete files, but they can certainly access them. Now, they won't see anything in any of these folders just because we haven't uploaded anything yet, but I think you see what I've done here. By the way, if you wanted to make other users admins for your server, you just come to your users and add them to the admin group. And in our case, that would give them permissions to write to our media group folder. But anyway, getting past that, Nextcloud Server actually offers other services like an email client and an instant messaging app for users on our server, a contacts application, a calendar application, and a photos application. All right, now I'm going to show you what it's like to connect to your Nextcloud server via the Nextcloud mobile app, which is available for both iOS and Android. So what you're going to do is download the Nextcloud mobile app, and once you've got it downloaded, open it up, and then click login, and then just type in your server's IP address. In my case, 192.168.1.156, then hit done. And if you're on an iOS device and you get this prompt, click OK. Okay, and if it says the internet connection appears to be offline, check your connection and then try again. Okay, now it's going to complain about our self-signed certificate. You're just going to say yes, you want to connect to this server anyway. All right, and the first time you log into your Nextcloud server on a mobile device, it'll allow you to go through this process to connect your account. Just click login and then type in your Nextcloud account information. Pardon me while I punch that in. And then once you're done, hit login, and then it'll bring you to this screen asking you, do you want to grant access to your Nextcloud account from this device? Just click grant access. All right, and now you're in. And from now on, whenever you open the Nextcloud mobile app on this device, it'll bring you to your server on your account. And this is where you would go if you wanted to add an account or switch accounts. Like for example, if you've set up port forwarding and you need to add your public IP address for connecting from outside your local network, you can do that here. But anyway, I'm going to close out of this. And there you go. You pretty much use it similar to how you'd use it on the web interface. All right, so now I'm going to show you a quick optional step you can do to greatly reduce the amount of maintenance that you have to do on this server, which is to configure automatic updates. So what you're going to do is sudo nano /etc/apt/apt.conf.d/50 unattended -upgrades. Then hit enter, punch in your password, and then what you're going to do is come down here to allowed origins, and then uncomment the lines updates and backports. All right, and then you're going to come down here to unattended upgrade mail, uncomment that line, and then in the quotes, just put in your email address, say drewhowdentech@gmail.com, and then I would come down here to mail report and then change this to only on error. This is so that way it'll email you if there's a problem with your unattended upgrades. And then come down here to remove unused dependencies, uncomment that, and then set this to true so that way it automatically removes any unused dependencies. And now just come down to automatic reboot, then uncomment this line, and then change this to true, so that way if there are any updates that require a reboot, say kernel updates, then it'll automatically reboot to get those done. Now on that note, come down to automatic reboot time, uncomment that, and then set a time to do an automatic reboot. 2 in the morning is good. Just keep in mind that this is in 24-hour time, just so that way you can control when it does automatic reboots. That way it's at a time when you know nobody's going to be using it. And I think that's pretty much it. So we can control X, Y, and then enter. And the only thing you got to keep in mind is that Ubuntu Server by default is in UTC time. So you're going to have to take whatever local time you want it doing the automatic reboots and then convert that to UTC and then put that into automatic reboot time, if that makes sense. But anyway, we are done. Now, if you want to access your server from outside your house, then you're going to need to go into your router settings and set up a port forwarding rule to your server. And by the way, I've gone over how to do that in this video. The ports you'll need to forward are 80 and 443 for your HTTP and HTTPS access to your server. And no, I wouldn't open up your SSH to the internet, since that can just pose a security risk if you don't have that locked down. And it's not really necessary, especially if you've set up automatic updates on your server. And that concludes my video on how to set up a dedicated home file / media server on Ubuntu Server. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, found it was helpful, hit the like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment.